Hello, everybody. Lee Peterson, I lead the Secure WAN product management team. I've brought some support here with me, Shankar and Tom. So, jump in anytime questions. Don't need to tell this audience that, but ready for anything you can throw at us. So there's two parts to this presentation we're going to talk about today. First, I'm going to talk about the unified branch. So it's an approach that we're announcing here at Cisco Live around how we can go deploy branches at scale, the right level of reliability and the right level of security. And we'll go into some details, some demos of that. Second part of the presentation, I'm going to talk about the new hardware devices we're launching here at Cisco Live as well. So you would have seen slides like this before. I think that there's been some of these that have been maybe a little bit architecture in the past, but I think a lot of what you'll see from all of the business units here across wireless switching and routing being the one I'm responsible for, is the legitimacy around having those devices be able to be managed by a cloud platform. So the platform approach is an important element of this because we need to make sure that we've got a common point from an intelligence perspective. Where do we do AI? And it's very hard to do that in a disparate fashion. And certainly things like assurance, right? Making sure that we've got a common layer for when we go to assure owned and unowned infrastructure, that we can do that consistently as well. Where we've spent a lot of our time over the past little bit here is trying to simplify this idea. We hear this consistently. The challenge with branches is that there's lots of them. They're very spread out, and they generally don't have IT people in them. So think of a retail store. You haven't got a network operator sitting there trying to deal with any problems. They're also very complicated, right? So the ability to deploy at scale with the right level of consistency to make sure that we don't have the risk of configuration drift. You might have a playbook of how you want to deploy, but as soon as that is somebody in a user interface clicking around doing these things, or somebody in a CLI running a bunch of scripts, the risk of that drift happening and the risk of you introducing security vulnerabilities or performance issues in your network is pretty great. So what we focused on is how do we go and make that much better? How do we interact with this new platform that we're talking about? So not net new platform, but just the new way of thinking about the platform in a way that's going to be able to be scaling. So everyone's familiar with Terraform or infrastructure code as general. We're announcing here at Cisco Live our branches code efforts. So I'll build this out a little bit. It's pretty quick and easy to talk about. I will get into a demo of this in a moment, but the idea is that, take that platform as the base layer. We want to really make sure that we can have, when we think of infrastructure as code, what it does well, open source approach to managing infrastructure, and literally, hints in the name, treating it as code. So being able to have my configuration saved in Git, the same way I save my software, and being able to have that be version controlled, being able to have that part of a deployment pipeline is really what the efforts are around this. We're also layering on, this isn't just open source effort and we just throw it over the fence and good luck to anybody who wants to try and use it. We are building some services around this as well. So CX will certainly come in and consult and help either partners and customers get up and running. And the beauty when they do that is we can start thinking about applying best practices to this environment as well. So how do we make sure that we are taking decades of knowledge of how to deploy and how to manage in a consistent way, and making sure that we don't have missteps as we go to deploy and configure and operate these branch networks. And like I said, this essentially then makes the network configuration just part of the standard CI/CD pipeline that the partner or the customer is managing in their environment. So I won't go to the workflow here. I will actually jump straight into the actual demo. So the case we want to show here is, imagine I've got 3 active sites and I want to deploy 5 more. So what are the steps I want to do to use that using Terraform to make that happen? So firstly, we're here in GitLab. And like I mentioned, you can see the network configuration saved there in Git. And so that means you've got versioning. That means that you've got the ability to use the web tools that you use from the perspective of managing software in the same way. So we can jump out here to the web IDE. And what we're going to do here is actually copy that configuration to go say, I want to deploy 5 more sites. And so this is something where, again, we put predefined defaults. We know what the right things to put in here are. You're able to then take that, push that back into your deploy pipeline. We can check on that as it runs. And each of the steps here is like, we don't want any engineer to be able to just go and run this without any sort of controls over it. Similar to when you make a code push, a merge request that would be verified and validated both, probably by a human. It's probably maybe a manager or a level of sign off on making these sort of changes, but also an automated way to configure and pre-test prior to us deploying this out. We don't want to go push a mass change out and obviously take a segment of the network offline. And also post-test validate. And again, because this is managed by the way we manage software, the ability to roll back in the case that I did do something wrong. So we can see here that we jump over to the dashboard and we can see these new branches that have actively been deployed. So that's the logical deployment. Now what that allows us to do is, because the logical deployment has happened, the type of person I can send on site to do the actual deployment now doesn't have to be a network engineer. Anybody who understands low voltage cabling, it basically takes it to being a plug and play experience. I'm able to get in there and just configure, connect them in the right way, and they're able to operate that in a very much simpler way. And the idea is that instead of taking hours to deploy a branch location, you can do it in minutes. We really don't want to have people in the middle of the night during the times that these sort of locations are down offline trying to stress about deploying at midnight in a remote location. So, questions. I'm shocked I got 6 slides and there was no questions. This is not like any other tech field day I've seen.
When you're describing branch as code and you were showing the pipeline there from GitLab, was that interacting directly with Meraki dashboard, right, from a cloud management perspective?
Yeah, so it's again, we use the Terraform provider. So we use Terraform rather than Ansible because Terraform's stateful, right? And that's how it gets expressed as code, and that's the interaction back into the dashboard.
Okay,
yeah,
gotcha. Thank you.
Version of Terraform provider.
We developed our own. So if you look at HashiCorp's Terraform provider directory, the most used, most downloaded one is Starbucks has published one. So we're in every Meraki's in every Starbucks in North America. So we are actually, in conjunction with our CX counterparts, publishing this. There will be an open source Terraform provider that is validated and verified by us. And we're wrapping all of this up in, there's a Cisco validated design for the infrastructure as code part, but there's also a Cisco validated design on what are the set of equipment that I would use in different environments. So we want to have a CVD for small, medium, and large branches across different verticals. Right? What's a medium healthcare look like versus a small retail? So that'll be a set of blueprints that you can use in terms of how do you actually decide what to deploy. Introducing the Cisco 8000 series secure router. So I'll just give you some of how the spaghetti's made, because you guys are close enough that you will understand this. I have been Cisco for 8 years. For 7.5 of those years, that was with Meraki. Last November, we realigned the networking group. It's part of G2 coming in, and we're now aligned in what we call a pin alignment, place in network. So I'm responsible for routing. So that's all of the Meraki properties, MX, MG, Z series products, and the Catalyst portfolio. So the Catalyst 8000, but also any of the legacy stuff like ISR. We have the same for switching, where that's now a unified group. We have the same for wireless. We also have the same for platform. So that's sorry, I hate having to get up here and talk org chart, but I think it's important when you think about why we're doing things the way we are and why we've introduced these products. So the objective of this product, that this is an extension of the portfolio. So you're deploying and using MX or Catalyst devices today, continue to do so. None of those, we're not end of sailing anything as part of this new announcement, but these are the products that we are sort of, I guess, amalgamating to would probably be the best word for it, because it's not going to happen overnight, and we understand that there is acceptance and validation and verification our customers would do before moving to this. So calling out some of the elements within this product that are unique, the Cisco networking processor, and I want to call out, this isn't Silicon One, this is merchant silicon with Cisco IP. Its primary job is to be really good at cryptographic workloads. So we work very closely with our chip partner on that to make sure that we have the speed we need, right? And so think of the basic things this sort of box does. Obviously, things like IPsec, SD-WAN, we want to make sure we can do that at the highest speed possible. But then in a post-quantum crypto world, I mean, what are you hearing generally about post-quantum crypto? Because we see a lot of it in financial services and Fed. Are you seeing it as a point of concern for customers or in the community?
There's a lot of interest in it. I think there's a lot of curiosity around it. Everybody's sort of wondering what it's all going to look like, and I think everybody's just sort of pining for data to digest at this point.
Yeah. So look, we again, the advantage of the secure networking processor, the way that we're going to have to go to higher order levels of encryption in order to be ready for a post-quantum crypto world. We're positioning this as the platform to do that, and evolution of standards, which we're actively participating in. It's a safe bet that if you're trying to make an investment that's 5 to 10 years out and it's future-proof for that, it's good to start thinking about this stuff now, because I do not want to be around when the quantum chip just appears from nowhere, which hopefully it doesn't, and we've got a zero-day exploit that suddenly all the IPsec we're running around the world is vulnerable, or all the way that we're encrypting data at rest is vulnerable. So at a number of levels, secure boot in terms of the actual platform itself being secure, security, and from a crypto perspective, the management plane, and then also the data in transit. So addressing that at all 3 levels, and like I said, we're actively participating in the standards bodies, and we'll introduce that over time. That also allows us to, there's a generational improvement with this processor when you even ignoring the encryption part of it, just from a straight bandwidth perspective, right? So the natural, obviously, chips with more cores, more speed, more ability to run higher speed. So very much a step function change. I tell people the story, in my house in the Bay Area, I have a 10 gig symmetrical fiber connection for $40 a month. And I've moved away from that house, unfortunately. I do no longer have that, which I'm very sad about, but you better believe selling a house in Silicon Valley is the first thing you list there, 10 gig symmetrical fiber. But the speeds are now at the point where there's not just the availability of those speeds, right? No one's really ordering anything less than a gig circuit unless they're in a constrained environment. But they're also, the applications, as people start thinking more about doing AI at the edge. It's certainly very compute and processing heavy and bandwidth heavy applications like video. there is going to be more demand for that. So I don't think it's purely about the demand and the availability being out of sync. I do think those two will meet over time. So building a better box, build a better mousetrap, build something that's faster and operates at a higher speed is important. The other element of this is a secure router, and why we've been very careful about the branding of this is that the NGFW, so if we go back to the secure networking processor, its ability to run the things we need to from a firewall perspective as not line rate, we wish it was line rate, but as close to line rate as we can get. So the performance hit from turning on firewall services within this box, we want to make sure that's not immense.
So 8,000, is this like, I think the second thing this week that I've heard with the 8,000 number? So because I took a course about the 8,000 iOS XR routers. I'm guessing these run XR?
No, these run XE. So these are a continuation of the existing Catalyst 8000 series. We don't want to renumber these things every time we launch something new. So if you actually look at the SKUs, which I don't have listed here, these are the whatever number, let's pick one, the 8145-G2. I don't want to change the numbering scheme ever again. Right, I want to be able to introduce the G3, and you'll go, okay, I know what that is because I was using the G2. So these are a generational evolution of the current Catalyst 8000 series platform, and that's why we carry that forward versus building another new numbering scheme and having to educate everybody on that. So this is a full refresh of the entire portfolio. So 13 new SKUs addressed here in this new launch. I mentioned the idea that, don't have a slide now, it's fine, I'll talk to it. This is where, so you can imagine that the base of these will run iOS XE. So what we want to be very clear on is that if you're productized and standardized on CLI and scripting and SolarWinds, we're not taking any of that stuff away. This is not about saying, let's go make something brand new and you've got to go completely throw everything out. And we recognize that I wish the world was all greenfields, but these are often going to operate in brownfields environments. So that's important to address. We have on-prem management, also very important. So making sure that we continue to invest in Catalyst Center, Catalyst SD-WAN Manager. We talk about the platform and the effect that we're going to have there. We want to integrate the on-prem and the cloud platforms a bit more closely, but we're not trying to build one ring to rule them all. We do see the cloud is probably the right answer for most of customers, but that doesn't mean it's the right answer for all customers. We're not trying to force that as like, oh, you're going to have to come to the cloud to get all these benefits. We'll continue to innovate across all those domains. Now, I mentioned the MX portfolio. So we're launching what would have been the MX650 under this product lineup as well. It's going to be the 8455-MX. So I'm going to maintain an MX-based operating system that operates cloud native the same way MX devices do today. And as we go through and refresh that product lineup, it will fall in under here. The second investment I'm making, though, is that these iOS XE-based devices being on the cloud. So think of just the beauty of doing this consistently across wireless switching and routing is a decent amount of inheritance. So the work that the switching team has done, we're able to pick that up and also have these XE routers be cloud managed. Day one, it's not going to be native and it's not going to be comparable, exactly with what you do with Meraki. But over time, the ability to use an API to address either an iOS XE-based device or an MX-based device, we want that to be somewhat normalized and not have to make a decision between the two.
So you said these are merchant silicon-based hardware platforms. Are they VPP under the hood as far as the packet processors are concerned?
They're CPP.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. So building on the stuff that we've done before with it's not an architecture change from an XE perspective.
From an XE perspective.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Yep.
Even on the MX variant.
MX variant will continue to run an MX OS. Yeah, that's
So that'll be PPP based probably, or who knows?
We're not really going down that path right now.
Okay.
Right. So I think I want to have the right tool for the right job, and increasingly, like I said, that idea if you're in a brownfields environment where you've standardized an XE, you've got ISR 4Ks, let's say, and you don't want to change your whole operating model, taking one of these running XE is going to be a better choice for you than trying to step into the MX operating system. But if you're already embedded, you're a pure play Meraki, stay on the MX operating system. There's no need to move to this. So optionality around that, and we're not really trying to converge and have one OS that does it all.
Does them all.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll continue two streams. There may be some rationalization down the path, right? I think I'd love, let's play forward 2 years. I would love to have the 8455 as a sort of VP concentrator.
Persona or whatever.
Yeah, and I'd love to be able to do a mixed fabric, right? Be able to have an SD-WAN fabric that can either be XE-based or MX-based and be able to mix and match, because maybe I want big devices in my big locations with more configurability, and my remote locations, small sales offices, maybe it's a simple deploy MX, maybe one with wireless and cellular in it as well.
Please, that would be great.
Yeah.
We've been asking for that forever. What's the limitations on that Terraform provider right now? Is that all XE? Is that MX? Like, where does that fit in the hierarchy of products?
It fits through things that use the Cloud Dashboard. So Cloud Dashboard, which is shorthand for Meraki, but the identity of that evolving somewhat. So right now, if you said to me, hey, Lee, I want to go, this is great, I want to go do an infrastructure as code program tomorrow, I would say do that on the MX, because the MX has got the cloud nativeness. We have some base level XE on cloud features as we launch these devices. So they're orderable today, shipping in August, September timeframe? Shipping August, September. They'll have a very base level of ability to onboard to the cloud, but you won't be able to use an API to go do a full SD-WAN deployment, let's say. So that's every 6 months as we roll into like a Cisco Live, we'll be talking about what we're developing from an infrastructure as code perspective and where the MX and the XE-based devices are on that journey.
Okay. And working with, so we just had a presentation earlier today that was about essentially campus fabric on MX. It's going to be coming out later this year. Like in the dashboard, working on that, like keeping that Terraform provider in line with what's capability of the dashboard. Is there going to be any separation, any lag? Is there concerns about maintaining that feature parity with what you can do from a UI perspective versus Terraform perspective? I'm just kind of curious where your head's at on that.
Look, I think the UI ends up lagging. Well, we want to be API first and everything. So universally across our engineering teams and us as product leaders, we write the API first, right? So what that should give the ability to is to have the the UI, you don't need the UI to get started with the API. So we'll build that out first because that's the infrastructure upon which the UI is built.
And when you say API first, I understand that, but I would say that traditional Meraki API versus this Terraform provider are two different components at the moment. So when you say API first, I'm looking to make sure the Terraform provider, as if we're going to go talk to customers about this or go talk about this, like where does that sit in the hierarchy of that development process?
Yeah, I think we want to treat them as one and the same. So define requirements in terms of what do we need to build from an API perspective and how does that get represented in Terraform, right?
Okay.
We'll make the engineering teams responsible for that.
Your plan is to keep those in lockstep.
Totally, yeah.
Okay.
Kind of goes to my question earlier about Terraform provider versioning, because there's some concerns in the community. Actually, there's a lot of concerns in the community with Terraform and their licensing change that they made, somewhat recently. They went for, the details are eluding me right this second, but they essentially went from like an open source license that was, very permissive to a very restricted open source license. That a lot of people are saying it's not really open source. So how's that going to work with the Cisco provider? I mean, do you guys like sort of usurp their licensing in a way, or?
I don't say it's licensing it separately, but I look at it. If AWS can have, or Amazon can have one provider, I think we really should challenge ourselves to do the same.
Okay.
Yeah, but I wouldn't see us having a license that replaces that in any way, because we're not selling that. It should be available whatever GNU or whatever license is available under.
I would like to switch gears a little bit.
Please.
You had mentioned that that there are no plans to go to a unified OS, but that's something that Cisco competitors have embraced wholeheartedly. And I hear back from a lot of customers that they're very enamored of a much more simplified single operating system. It makes their ability to automate across the enterprise a lot easier. It makes their ability to keep their skill sets up to, by not having to split out. I'd really like to hear from you as to what strengths you believe you have with multiple different OS.
So look, if we were starting Cisco today, would we sit down and go, hey, let's go build 7 OSs? We wouldn't. But we also recognize that the journey towards convergence, it doesn't happen overnight. So what we really want to do is we'd love to be able to say, let's start from the customer outcome back in. We hear consistently, I want the simplicity of Meraki, but the power of Catalyst, right? And we are converging at the management plane level and having that be one thing. And over time, as the feature sets get richer and the routing capabilities, the MXOS get richer, specifically with routing, and the XE, the cloud management that gets richer, we can make a decision on do we start to do some elimination. But I don't want to predict that because I know it's going to be a journey until both of those things are true. I'm going to continue to invest in the MX operating system and build routing features. We've got some really exciting stuff on the roadmap over the next 12 months. We're bringing VRFs, we're bringing third WAN, active FHA, BGP support for IPv6. Right, there are things we're going to continue to invest there because we've got customers that want just nothing more than operational simplicity. But the much larger base for us is that XE base. So the history of devices that we've deployed over the last several decades. We can't just say, let's just go smash to one to the other. If we could smush them together and make them one thing overnight, we would do that. But the reality is it's going to be a long process. So I won't say that there's no specific roadmap item we're tracking right now saying, let's converge these to one, but it's certainly in the back of our mind that as the features get richer and richer, how can we see them sort of going like this? And we can make a decision at some point in the future to say, let's go put all our eggs in that basket. But yeah.
And I'd like to kind of challenge that, because as we talk about trends in networking, we talk about, it started with a single pane of glass to be able to look at our network from one end to the other end as a unified body. We want one software to drive it all. We want to be able to have a centralized controller. We want to be able to manage our WAN from a single space. We want it to be able to pull down our clouds multiple from a single space. The idea of holding on to a single OS simply because developing a unified OS is hard kind of begs the question of the company's fortitude. I mean, I'm not trying to pick a fight here, but I think that the longer that Cisco says, well, this is hard, we're not going to do it, somebody's going to come along with a unified OS that's simple, that they've developed and supports the feature sets that customers want, and they're going to eat your lunch. And that's what I've got to say.
Yeah. So look, appreciate the feedback. We have to serve a range of people, right? So we go all the way from, you can have my CLI when you're pried out of my cold dead hands, to all I want is just to manage from the cloud. And that's a pretty big spectrum. And the idea of what's the one answer to satisfy both ends of that spectrum is very difficult.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue that point with you, that's a difficult prospect. But I never imagined that Cisco would shy away from a challenge. And I feel like, I've heard a lot of conversations about a unified OS, and I feel like this is the challenge that Cisco's shying away from. And I would encourage Cisco to embrace the uncomfortableness.
Yep. No, appreciate the feedback. Look, and I'm very focused here on things that are audible in a very short time window and launching in the next 6 months. So this isn't a 2, 3, 4, 5 year roadmap. We have ideas, but we want to see how some of these short-term bets we're making play out.
And there's a place for short term, but there's also a place for longer term vision and being out seeking the future.
Especially because nobody wants to buy a product that comes with short term attached to it.
Yeah, and this is the point. Any investment today, whether somebody's standardized on the Catalyst products or the MX products, they are both good investments. They're not going away. You can continue to operate these in the way you have in the past. And for those that are comfortable with the cloud, we're going to have new ways to do that on the XE base.